I've always been a thrill seeker, constantly pushing boundaries to find that next big adrenaline rush. The dark web was just another frontier for me, a digital Wild West where anything could happen. I'd read about it in forums, stories of twisted content, illegal marketplaces, and secret societies. It all seemed so unreal, like something out of a movie. But as I dived deeper, I realized just how dark it could truly get. One night, after hours of aimless browsing through encrypted chat rooms and obscure websites, I found myself on a forum dedicated to urban legends of the dark web. Most of it was the usual nonsense: ghost stories, cryptic messages, and conspiracy theories. But one thread stood out, simply titled "The Red Room." I had heard whispers about it before, a live-streamed torture session where viewers could participate by giving commands. Supposedly, it was just a myth, a way to scare off newbies. But the thread was filled with accounts from people who claimed to have seen it, each story more horrifying than the last. I didn't believe it. It had to be fake, right? Just a bunch of sick trolls trying to outdo each other. But as I continued reading, my screen suddenly went black. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I thought my computer had crashed. Then, out of nowhere, a pop-up appeared, its text flashing in bright red letters. "You've been invited." I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. The message was followed by a link, and below it, a timer counting down from 10 minutes. My fingers hovered over the mouse. Every rational part of me screamed to shut down the computer, to walk away, but I couldn't resist. This was what I had been searching for, the ultimate thrill. I clicked the link. The screen went dark again, and for a few seconds I heard nothing but the sound of my own breathing. Then, the image flickered to life. The first thing I saw was a dimly lit room, the walls bare and stained, with a single chair in the center. A man was strapped to it, his face obscured by a black hood. I could see his chest rising and falling rapidly, the only sign that he was alive. The chat box on the side of the screen erupted with messages, each more disturbing than the last. People were giving commands, twisted, violent commands, and whoever was behind the camera began to obey. The figure moved into view, a shadowy silhouette, and picked up a knife from a nearby table. My stomach churned as I watched him slice into the man's skin, the screams muffled by the hood. The chat went wild, urging him to go further, to do more. I wanted to look away, to close the window, but I was frozen in place. The man in the chair struggled, his cries becoming more desperate. Then suddenly, he stopped. He lifted his head, and even through the hood, I could feel his eyes on me. My breath caught in my throat. How could he see me? It was impossible. But then he screamed, "Help me! Please, they're watching you too!" Before I could react, the screen went black again. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel sweat dripping down my back. I tried to tell myself it was just a sick joke, a way to freak out the viewers. But as I reached for my phone to calm my nerves, it buzzed in my hand. A new message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You're next." Panic seized me. I dropped the phone, my hands trembling. The messages kept coming, one after another. They knew my name, my address, even details about my life that I had never shared online. It felt like someone was watching me, studying me. I shut down my computer, unplugged everything, but the fear wouldn't go away. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every little sound. The next day, I threw out my phone and laptop, trying to erase every trace of my digital presence. But even now, every time I'm alone, I feel eyes on me, hear whispers in the dark. And in the dead of night, when everything is quiet, I can still hear that man's screams echoing in my mind, begging for help that never came. I've always been drawn to the mysteries of the internet, especially the dark web. There's something about the unknown, the hidden corners of the digital world, that always fascinated me. I had been exploring it for years, hopping from one encrypted site to another, never staying too long in one place. Most of what I found was boring: illegal drugs, fake IDs, and counterfeit goods. but every once in a while I would stumble upon something that sent chills down my spine. One night, I came across a forum that I had never seen before. It had no name, no description, just a blank page with a list of users who had visited. At first glance, it seemed like a glitch, a forgotten corner of the web that no one used anymore. But as I scrolled through the list of usernames, something caught my eye. The usernames were all familiar, not because I knew them personally, but because they belonged to people who were dead. It seemed impossible, but there they were. Names of users who had died recently, some in tragic accidents, others in mysterious circumstances. There were even names of people who had died decades ago, long before the internet even existed. My rational mind told me it was just a coincidence, a sick joke by someone with too much time on their hands. But something about it felt wrong, deeply wrong. I kept scrolling, my curiosity getting the better of me until I saw it, my username. My heart skipped a beat. It was right there on the list, as if I had been marked. My palms began to sweat as I stared at it, unable to tear my eyes away. Then, just below it, a new thread appeared, titled Final Words. The thread was filled with posts, each one supposedly the last message of a user before they died. Most of them were incoherent, rambling about shadows, whispers, and strange figures that followed them. But then I saw a post that made my blood run cold. It was from someone with the exact same username as mine. "Don't ignore the knock," it read. "They know you're reading this." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. How could this be? I hadn't posted anything, yet there it was, in black and white. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp knock at my door. I jumped, nearly falling out of my chair. It was nearly midnight, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood frozen, my eyes glued to the door. The knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. I forced myself to move, to open the door, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty, silent. I stepped out, looking up and down the corridor, but it was as if no one had ever been there. I closed the door, my hands trembling. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me, I thought. Maybe I was just spooked by the forum, by that strange message. But the next night, the knocking returned, exactly at midnight. This time it was louder, more persistent, as if someone was trying to break the door down. I didn't dare open it. Instead, I went back to the forum, desperate to find answers. But the thread was gone, as if it had never existed. The entire forum had vanished, leaving nothing but a blank page. The knocking continued every night, growing more aggressive, more desperate. I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. I could hear whispers too, soft at first, but growing louder with each passing night. They spoke in hushed tones, in languages I couldn't understand, but I knew they were talking about me. Then, one night, the knocking stopped, replaced by a sudden, deafening silence. I thought it was over, but as I lay in bed trying to sleep, I heard it. A low, raspy breath right next to my ear. My body froze. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I felt a cold, clammy hand brush against my face, and then a voice, barely more than a whisper, said, "We've been waiting for you." The next morning, I packed my bags and left. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, didn't leave a forwarding address. I just drove until I couldn't drive anymore, far away from that place, from everything. But it didn't matter. The knocking followed me, no matter where I went. And every night, at exactly midnight, I hear that voice again, reminding me that they're still out there, still waiting for me to open the door. Before we dive into our next chilling tale, if you're enjoying these spine-tingling stories, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Share your thoughts or let us know which story scared you the most in the comments below. If you know someone who loves a good scare, make sure to share this video with them. And if you want to keep up with more terrifying tales, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you more content like this. Now, let's move on to our next story. I had always been fascinated by the darker side of the internet. The dark web was a place where you could find almost anything, no matter how bizarre or illegal. I spent countless hours browsing through various marketplaces, mostly out of curiosity. I'd seen everything from illicit drugs to counterfeit goods, but nothing had ever really shaken me until one night when I stumbled upon something truly horrifying. It was late, and I was exploring one of the more notorious dark web marketplaces when I saw the listing: authentic human skin mask, custom fit. At first, I thought it was a sick joke or a piece of grotesque art meant to shock. But as I read the description, my blood ran cold. The listing promised a mask made from real human skin, tailored to fit the buyer's face perfectly. The last line of the description made my stomach churn. Guaranteed to be real or your money back. I didn't think much of it at first. It seemed too outrageous to be real. But the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. Who would create something like this? And who would buy it? I bookmarked the page, trying to brush off my unease, but I couldn't shake the image of that mask from my mind. A week later, I received an email from an unknown sender with the subject line, "Your custom mask is ready." My heart raced as I opened the message. The email included a photo attachment that made me gasp. It was a close-up of a mask, eerily lifelike, and it looked just like my face, but twisted into a grotesque, smiling expression. The sight was enough to make my skin crawl. The shock was almost too much to handle. Before I could process what was happening, my phone rang. An anonymous voice on the other end, distorted and chilling, said, "Your address has been confirmed. The tailor thanks you for your purchase." I was paralyzed with fear. How could they know where I lived? I didn't order anything, but here it was, a package left at my front door. I tried to convince myself it was a prank, but the package was real. I couldn't bring myself to open it, so I tossed it in the trash and bolted my door shut. The terror, however, didn't end there. That night, I heard footsteps outside my window, slow and deliberate. My fear intensified as I saw a shadowy figure standing in the darkness, wearing the mask, my mask. The twisted smile seemed to glow faintly, and the figure moved as if inspecting my house, looking for a way in. Unable to bear it any longer, I packed a bag and fled in the middle of the night. I drove aimlessly, desperate to escape the nightmare. I moved to a new city, changed my phone number, and tried to leave my past behind. But no matter where I went, I couldn't escape the haunting memory of that mask. Every night, I kept the lights on and the doors locked. The sound of footsteps and the sight of shadows made my heart race. The figure in the mask was always there, just out of sight, waiting. It was a constant reminder of the terror I couldn't escape. No matter how far I ran, I knew that the mask and the horror it represented was always lurking just around the corner.